If you're struggling to book paid portrait and wedding sessions as a newer photographer, then this is the video series for you.
So welcome back to our video series, Free Marketing Tactics for Photographers. Now, today we're continuing conversation about networking, but this time we're talking about how other businesses can really be a powerful investment in the future of your own business.
But before we jump into that, we want to introduce ourselves.
I'm Hunter.
And I'm Sarah.
And we're Hunter and Sarah Photography, a husband and wife professional wedding photography team.
We're also educators, and our goal is to help photographers to build strong foundations in both their businesses and their personal lives so that they can run profitable and sustainable photography businesses.
So last week, we continued this marketing tactics series by talking about how networking with other photographers can be an investment in the future of your business.
This week, we are going to discuss all the other businesses that you can network with in order to book yourself paying photography jobs without spending a dollar. So we're going to start with weddings, but if you are a portrait photographer, don't worry. The second half of this video is going to be all about how you can use networking for your business as well.
Now, every single wedding is totally unique. However, a lot of couples, their wedding planning journey follows like somewhat of a rough theme, right? So they get engaged, they celebrate for a little while, and then they jump into wedding planning. And typically within 6 months of getting engaged, the very first thing they're going to do is book their wedding venue.
Yeah, of course, the venue is typically always the first step, since you can't really book anyone else until you know your date, and the venue kind of determines the date. So because venues are usually the first person booked for a photographer, a venue is what's called an upstream vendor.
Now, once a venue is booked, couples then move on to booking sort of the second round of other wedding vendors. And again, this is generalizing, and every couple is going to book vendors in a different order depending on kind of what's important to them. So, like, for example, if a couple is getting married and their top priority is throwing like the best party of the year for all their friends, then of course, like, their entertainment and their catering is probably going to be more important to them than like their photography or their florals. But generally speaking, once a venue is booked, a couple will start booking their photographer, their wedding planner, their caterer, and their kind of reception entertainment like a DJ or a band. And that makes those vendors what we call midstream vendors when compared to photographers, since they're booked kind of around the same time in the wedding planning process. And then usually a few months after that sort of first group of planners or of vendors are booked, then couples will sort of book everyone else. So compared to photographers, those would be what we call downstream vendors because they're coming after photographers are being booked. And these are things like your rentals, your cake, your florals, your officiant. And again, generalizing, but here's a diagram that sort of might help kind of lay this out visually.
Yeah. Now, here's the important part. The key to networking as a wedding photographer is to focus on upstream vendors as your first priority and midstream vendors as kind of your second priority. While it's great to know about downstream vendors and have people to recommend to your couples, since most of the time you will get booked before them, they won't actually be able to recommend couples to you.
So why focus on the upstream and midstream vendors? Because if a couple books a planner or a venue, for example, and don't have a photographer booked yet, and that venue or planner makes a strong recommendation or even just an introduction for you, then that's a really great way that you can get a lot of really warm, really qualified, excited leads into your inbox basically for free all the time. So let's talk about how we actually make these connections.
So let's actually start with how not to reach out to a wedding venue or a wedding planner. Do not send just a generic email blast to every venue and planner in town asking to be put on their preferred vendor list with just a link to your portfolio and your pricing.
Boo.
That email will get deleted in the blink of an eye.
So instead, start by focusing on just one or two planners and one or two venues who are serving clients really well and at a similar price point, right? If you're charging $1,000 for wedding photography, you're probably going to be wasting your time if you reach out to a $7,000 wedding planner or a $15,000 venue, right? So, but if you are just starting out, the good news is there are probably new venues and new planners in your area who are also just starting out, and they would probably love to have a strong relationship with a photographer at a price point that they can recommend, who's kind of in their corner right from the beginning.
Yeah. So instead of just reaching out and asking for something focus on building a relationship and serving those vendors without expecting anything in return. Start by simply keeping up with them on social media and learning about how they serve their couples. If it's a venue, like maybe you can eventually reach out to them about doing, a portrait session on their property at a time that's convenient to them, or even just showing up to take like a landscape couple of landscape photos for them to update their website with.
And now if it is a wedding planner or catering business or whatever, maybe see if you can take the lead planner out to coffee, or maybe they just need new headshots for their team, or maybe they need a photographer for some branding content, whatever. Any way that you can really use your gifts to serve them without expecting anything in return ultimately is just going to build goodwill among your local industry.
Yeah, it's just whatever you do, don't approach the situation only hoping to get something in return. A quid pro quo mentality is a terrible way to start building a relationship.
And that's any relationship, by the way. Quid pro quo is not the key to any relationship in your life, but especially networking.
Start by serving and then serve some more. If nothing ever comes from it except that you gained a reputation as someone who's always willing to help and serve others, then that's a success as far as we're concerned.
And there are going to be, there are wedding venues and vendors here in town who have our photos on their website and we took their headshot, but they've never referred us a lead before, right? And so do we look at those relationships as a total waste of our time? No. We got to use our gifts and our skills to just bless and serve others and made Charlottesville feel a little bit more like a community. Now, even though those weren't fruitful from a booking sense, doesn't mean we view it as a waste of time. Are we going to, keep serving them month after month for years and years if we never get anything from it? Probably not. But we don't look at it as a waste of time if we tried with a venue and it turned out we weren't really a great fit, or maybe they didn't have weddings to send like we thought they did.
Yeah, but, of course, there have been other times where our desire to serve has helped us build a mutually beneficial relationship where we get to love and serve those other vendors' couples with our photography. So whether it's capturing the natural beauty of a venue, or all the hard work of a planner, we know that their business is blessed by our photography, and we're incredibly grateful because they've recommended us to the couples that came seeking them and their wisdom.
And really just a final word of warning when it comes to this sort of B2B, business-to-business networking strategy is that it takes time. It's a big upfront investment, right? You're not going to go out to coffee with a wedding planner and they're going to book you 5 weddings the next week, right? It doesn't work like that. Sometimes it might take months or even a year of building that relationship slowly over time, genuinely serving them. But when the day comes when they book you a wedding, or you just happen to book a wedding at their venue, if you already have that strong relationship and then you show up and just knock that wedding out of the park, you love and serve their couple well, then you better believe at that point, now they know you, now they trust you, now they love your work and they've seen you do it, you better believe the leads are going to start coming.
Yeah, so now, portrait photographers, we haven't forgotten about you guys. Well, the strategy might and definitely does look very different than for a wedding photographer. The kind of same basic principle applies. Find other companies who you can form a mutually beneficial relationship with. So this is going to take a bit more creativity on your part, but building a small handful of these relationships that can keep you busy all year round will be worth investing in without spending money.
And keep in mind, you do have to get more creative as a portrait photographer, but it's also way less crowded, right? Every wedding venue in town probably has lots of photographers trying to get in with them. But this strategy, you might be the only person that's ever reached out to them as a photographer. So think all the way back to part 2 of this series where we talked about, think about where your ideal clients are hanging out online and then join those communities and serve them. This is kind of that same principle, except now you're thinking about where are your clients hanging out IRL, in real life? What businesses are they already interacting with regularly? And who in town already has access to your ideal clients? So we're going to run through a few examples to kind of hopefully get the ideas flowing.
Yeah, so to start, if you wanted to fill your calendar with family sessions, ask yourself, who is already connected with lots of families? Think about all the businesses that a family might regularly interact with. What about a dentist office that specializes in children, or maybe a daycare center or summer camp or an after-school program for kids? Maybe it's just your local realtor who specializes in residential homes for first-time home buyers.
let's do another example. What if you are all about newborn and maternity sessions, right? Then now, rather than, the dentist office, it's going to be the midwives or the doulas or the birthing classes at your local community center. And now let's think about seniors, high school seniors. Now the businesses that you're going to want to be interacting with are the ones who are already interacting with lots of, 16, 17, 18-year-olds. So now you're thinking about the local sports communities that are for older teens or whatever other extracurricular sort of after-school type programs, right? Like, you want to think about businesses that have your ideal client, but not a ton of other people, right? Marketing at a grocery store. Yes, are there lots of families there? Yes, but there's everyone there. So it's not necessarily the most targeted approach.
Yeah. So once you've identified that list of businesses who serve kind of the same demographic that you serve, the key is to reach out to them virtually or even just stop by their place of business and ask if you can talk to the manager or the owner. Just like with a wedding venue, you want to be ready to serve them and see if you can add value to the experience that they are already giving to their clients.
So a great example of sort of adding value to an experience they're already giving is when we bought our first home, our realtor, after we closed and had moved in, we got a package in the mail. One of the first packages we got at our new address was from them. And it was a big gift box, and it was full of local snacks and fun stuff. It had, tumblers that had their brand on it. But it also had some gift cards to some local businesses, right? So what if you connected with a realtor and every time they sent a gift box to a client, you included a gift certificate for a half-off family session, right? Knowing that, first of all, you're going to make, half the money, which is a great start, but also that family sessions tend to be repeat clients year after year if you do a good job. You could be giving away a half-off family session to book 10 more family sessions in the future, right? Those are the types of relationships where if they sell 50 houses a year and you can get 50 family sessions a year, that can really start to fill up a calendar.
Yeah, we also have an apprentice who has a great relationship with a local co-op farm. They have the farm has their own community that they've already built, and she just goes in a few times a year, offers mini sessions for the families, and shares a small percentage of her profit with the farm. So it's a win for the farm because they get an extra bit of money, and they're shown as being a valuable resource for their members. And our apprentice didn't have to do any marketing since the farm did the advertising for her to the community that the farm already had.
So she makes lots of money shooting mini sessions that she probably wouldn't have been able to book on her own just with her own following. And honestly, there are 1,000 of opportunities just like this in every local community. It's really just about brainstorming the ideas, finding the right people to connect with. So start brainstorming and start connecting. Just make sure that the list that you build is relatively long, the list of potential businesses, because you might need to reach out to 5 or 10 businesses before you make that one connection. And if you're trying to fill a year's worth of portrait sessions in your calendar, then obviously the more of these relationships you have, the better.
Mm-hmm. But that's it for this week.
Guys, we are going to be back at you next week with a new marketing hack and a new tactic and a new video. So make sure you like and subscribe so you don't miss any of our new stuff.
Yeah, and if you haven't already, we would really encourage you to join our Facebook community, Mastering the Wedding Photography Biz with Hunter and Sarah. We have a big announcement we're making later this month about an upcoming workshop for newer photographers. So make sure you go join the group. You don't want to miss it.
And of course, if you found this video helpful, if you have questions, or if you just feel like we missed something, feel free to comment below.
But thanks, guys. We'll see you next week with another free marketing tactic.